Thanks very much, Renat. I'm just going to focus on a few aspects of the work that we're doing in CARARE because it's pretty much impossible to speak about everything in 10 minutes. And I wanted to speak a little bit about the domain, and I think it's natural. People have a natural curiosity about the archaeological heritage. We know it's documented that people have been interested since the ancient Greece and Rome. Often they start wondering about what sort of stuff is in their local area. So if we type in some coordinates, we can go to a particular place in the world. And this coordinate takes us here. But the next question, once you get there, is what on earth's that? You want to know how old it is, what function it served. Is it a standalone monument? Is it part of something bigger? Have there been changes over time? And you wonder, how well is it known? Often there's been a lot of people who've looked at these monuments in the past. We have documented sources going back to the 16th and 17th centuries for this kind of thing. There have been a lot of interventions on the monuments, whether it's modern scientific investigations or historical events. So you wonder, how can I find out more? And, does that take you to a simple keyword search box? How do you find the words to ask about these monuments that you've seen? Of course, there are other options. We've seen a few today. Mark Call very elegantly showed an image-based approach, but there are a lot of map-based search approaches in the archaeological domain. The partners in CARARE, on the whole, hold specialist databases, and they often provide map-based entry points. But these entry points tend to be confined within national or regional boundaries. There are technical reasons for that, but if we just focus on the fact that archaeology actually doesn't exist within modern national borders. So Europeana is something which crosses borders, is quite an attractive environment for us. So now I'm going to try and talk a little bit about harvesting and aggregating content into Europeana. What we've done in CARARE is set up a harvesting and aggregation protocol. Okay, so apologies for those of you who've seen this slide before, but it seemed a better place to start again. Because I'm speaking about the types of content which isn't naturally confined within natural borders, I started off speaking about place-based searching. And Europeana and the European environment is quite attractive to us because it allows us to look at content across borders. But aggregating that content involves... I'm going the wrong way. Aggregating that content involves understanding the domain. And what we've done in CARARE is define a framework for the metadata for the types of content that we know that exists within our domain. We have an object framework which holds together information, whether it's about the monuments in the real world, the archives that describe or represent those objects, activities which have taken place, and also the collections in which this content sits. You could ask why we shouldn't just use something like Lido or Dublin Core or one of the other schemas that are around, but the benefit of having a harvesting protocol which is specific to a domain is that we can refer to concepts that are familiar to people. It's rich where the domain calls for it to be rich. So we have a huge amount of information about time and space and about the character of the monuments that are being described. We have date ranges which go from minus 500,000 to the present day, which isn't normal in a bibliographic database. So our data is rich in some places. And it also means that we can offer domain-specific documentation that's illustrated with examples of records from our content providers. So having a harvesting protocol for the domain is there to support the quality of the data and also to allow us to provide a framework for mediating between the original databases and the Europeana data model. So what we're doing is harvesting metadata into a repository in CARARE schema format, and then we're using mappings to enable a transformation from the CARARE schema format to the EDM format. And this is one of Stefan's diagrams. This is the, I think it's the version 5.1 of the EDM. And I just mentioned the version of the EDM because actually we've completed a mapping to the full theoretical model of the EDM. But the next step is actually looking at how the EDM is being implemented at this moment in time. So right now, the Europeana team are working on the implementation of EDM in the interface, and they've selected certain attributes of EDM for implementation this autumn. So following that XML schema that's now available, we've completed another mapping, so a simplified mapping from a CARARE object to actually a series of EDM provided heritage objects. So each provided cultural heritage object will have related web resources, related aggregations, and relationships to contextual information about place. Not all of the information that we're collecting can be mapped at the moment. It doesn't necessarily fit within the current implementation, and some of the space-based information or the time-based information doesn't fit within the EDM structure as it exists right now. But with this mapping, we can get archaeology content into Europeana, which is great. But we have to think about the future. So I began with an example of a search that began with a map and a coordinate. And that's what we're doing. We're bringing an awful lot of content to Europeana, 2 or 3 million items of content which will have coordinate data attached to it. It should make a large impact on the amount of data that's in Europeana with that type of geo-information. We have not just points, centroids for our sites, but we also have areas and bounding boxes. So the Roman temple that I showed you earlier has a footprint on the Earth's surface. It sits within a town, which also has a footprint. So if in the future we're looking at true map-based searching and GIS functionality, then we're also looking at the areas and the sites which fall within areas and building up thematic views of the content in different ways. Apparently I have 3 minutes left, but that was where I was going to finish. So as I said in the beginning, I just wanted to focus on a few aspects of what we're doing and some of the issues where CARARE data is rich. And perhaps, although recognizing that the EDM offers potential and offers a rich object contextualized model, we also have a middleware layer which provides additional context. So one of the things that as a project we need to think about in the future is maybe how we can exploit that middle layer to add and enhance the value for the archaeology and the architectural domain. So thanks very much.